To start recording or begin recording. Just as a reminder, if you just came on, hang on, Carolyn. If you have this sheet of paper, print it out. I want you to get it. If you aren't able to print it out, that is okay. You can take a plain sheet of paper and fold it into thirds. Okay, Carolyn, what was your question, sweet girl?
My mom is doing it now.
Okay.
I will just print it out.
Oh, that's fine. We don't need it quite yet anyway. All right, let's go back to yesterday. I'm going to mute everyone's microphone just so we can get rid of some background noise. And yesterday we talked about the main idea and key details from the story. We said that in our story, Snowy Day, the main idea is what the story is mainly about. And the key details are like the little snowflakes falling from a cloud. They're details, small events that happened in the story. We said in the story, Snowy Day, it was mainly about a boy who plays in snow. That is not a complete sentence, so that's why I don't have a capital and a period. It's just a thought or an idea. Then, the key details we said, these were all key details from our story, that he was able to climb a hill, pretend like he was climbing a mountain. He went down the hill on a sled. He had a snowball fight, and he was able to wake up, or he woke up and saw snow on the ground. These are all key details from the story, however, they are not in order. We learned a fancy-nancy word for putting a story in order. That word was sequencing. We need to sequence these key details and put them in order. That's what we're going to work on today. So Miss Cates is going to show you the Snowy Day book. We're going to read that again. And we're going to put our story in order from beginning to end. So let's listen carefully as we read again the Snowy Day.
The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, an animated storybook. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on a snowsuit and ran outside. Snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, crunch, crunch. His feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out like this. He walked with his toes pointing in like that. Then he dragged his feet slowly to make tracks. He found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. It was a stick that was just right for smacking the snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow, plop, on top of Peter's head. He thought it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight. But he knew he wasn't old enough. Not yet. So, he made a smiling snowman, and he made angels. He pretended he was a mountain climber. He climbed up great, big, tall heaping mountain of snow and slid all the way down. Picked up a handful of snow and another and still another, packed it round and firm, and put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. He told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. And he thought and thought and thought about them. Before he got into bed, he looked in his pocket.
His pocket was empty. The snowball wasn't there.
He felt very sad. While he slept, he dreamed that the sun had melted all the snow away. But when he woke up, his dream was gone. The snow was still everywhere. New snow was falling. After breakfast, he called to his friend from across the hall. And they went out together in the deep, deep snow.
All right. Sorry, I got started over. Okay, so that was the snowy day. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a look at our handout, and we're gonna see for each snowflake you see a 1, a 2, and a 3. And then there's a place for your name at the bottom. So, it says the snowy day sequence of events. What did Peter do in the snow? Draw the correct order of events. So, it's not just what did Peter do in the whole book, but what did he do in the snow? Can someone remember and raise your hand if you do? What was one of the first things he did in the snow? Estelle?
I think he saw the snow so piled up and then he made tracks.
Okay, let's check and see if our answer's right. The best way I know how to do that is to refer back to the text. So I'm going to go back to the book and turn to the page. So we saw that he woke up and saw snow on the ground, but he's not in the snow yet. So let's keep on going. And here he is in the snow. He's just walked outside. And the first thing he does is what? Is she right? Is that the first thing he does? Yeah, he makes tracks in the snow. First he makes them this way with his toes pointed out. Then he makes it this way with his toes pointed in. Then he finds a stick and makes a track like this, where he slides his feet. So why don't we'll go back to our PowerPoint, and we can draw a picture of his footprints in the leaving tracks in the snow. I'm gonna get a blue. Where'd I put my blue? And I'm gonna try to draw his footprints in the snow. And I'll draw the snow. You do it too. And don't forget, there's a place at the bottom where you can write your name down at the bottom of the page. can raise their hand and tell me what was the next event he did in the snow. Does anyone think they know? What did he do next? Ryan, what did he do next?
I think he tried to play with the big boys, but he knew he's not old enough.
I think let's see. Great thought, Ryan. Let's go back to the text, go back to the book, and look and see. So we're coming over, and it looks like I see somebody over there. Oh, there are the big kids. And that's when he was sliding down the hill with the big kids, right? So we could draw that in our next spot on the box. So let's pull this up. I'm going to mute our microphones because I have some friends who are not muted. We'll put that in our next part of our story. So in number 2, maybe I could show him sledding down the hill with the snowball. So I'll draw the snowy hill and maybe take my red marker . Oh, here it is. And I can draw him in his red suit with kind of the point. He kind of looks like a starfish, kind of, to me, but sliding down the hill. All right, what happens after this? What happens after this? Who can raise their hand and share that with me? Nicole?
He makes them snowballs and puts them in the pocket, and then he go back home.
Right, he wanted to make, at the end of the story, it showed him, let's refer back to the text. Let's go back to our book.
Miss Kate?
Yes.
What about the snowball fight?
Well, that was what he was doing with the big boys when he slid down the hill. Russell, what's your question, buddy? He did, and he made snow angels too. He made some snow angels, and he pretended like he climbed the hill, and then he made the snowballs to bring home and put in his pocket. But we've only got 3 blanks, so we're gonna move ahead to the end where he brings the snowballs to put in his pocket. And that was the last thing he did in the snow before he went home. So what you could do, if you didn't want to do the event that we talked about him sledding down the hill and having the snowball fight with the big boys, you could put him making snow angels if you wanted to, or him pretending to be a mountain climber. But at the very end, he did make a snowball. I thought about drawing his red mitten, that's his hand, and drawing 3 snowballs in his hand. And those are the 3 events in order that he did in the snow. And of course he came inside, and what happened to his poor little snowballs? They melted because they can't live without being. Snow will melt if it comes into a warm temperature. I'll show you how this looks right here. If you want to look at this, here's what it looks like up here for you. You can try to copy. You do not have to write the words. If you want to try to write the words, you can. But you can just draw the picture. And these are the order of the events that happened in the story. Why is it important when you retell a story that you tell it in order? Can anyone answer that question for me? Why do we need to tell it in order? What if I just want to tell it any way I want to tell it? Why is it important to tell it in order? Adeline?
I think because it makes the story.
Right. Does it help the story to make sense? Would the story make sense if I told it out of order?
No.
No, it wouldn't make sense. Like if I told the story, there's this little boy and he made a snowball and put it in his pocket. It melted. He woke up one morning and there was snow outside, so he made tracks in the snow. He took a bubble bath because he packed up the snowball and he put it in his pocket. Oh yeah, he made tracks in the snow and some snow angels. And oh yeah, he had breakfast and none of that makes sense, does it? That's way too silly. We can't understand. So it's important that when we're retelling a story, we tell it in order, in the order that it happened. So, and as you guys are finishing this up, I want to ask you a few more questions. So we talked about the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Is this story about real or pretend things? When we do this story, is this about real events or is this pretend? Who could answer that for me? Nicole?
It's maybe pretend because we can make our tracks, but we couldn't slide. We couldn't slide down a hill out of a slide, and we couldn't put a snowball in our pocket.
You couldn't sled down a hill, and you couldn't build a snowball and put it in your pocket? Yeah, you could. You could do those things. If it snows on Friday and we get more than just an inch of snow, you could try to sled down a hill and you could try to make a snowball. You already know what'll happen if you try to put it in your pocket, but I think all these things could really happen. The events in the story are real. How do we know that they're real? How do we know that these events could really happen? Who could answer that, do you think? How do we know that these events are real and could really happen? Someone I haven't called on. Ryan?
I know you can make those snowball, put it in your pocket, but you can't take it home because it will melt.
Have you ever done any of these things in real life? Have you ever done that? Yeah, so you've had these experiences before. That's how you know they're real. Sometimes we know they're real because we've done it before. Other times we know that it's real because we could imagine it. We could stop and think, wait a minute, I've never sled down a hill before, but I'm pretty sure I could if it snowed. So sometimes we know events are real because we've done them, and sometimes we know events are real because we can slow down and think about it, that they could really happen. Why do you think the author, Ezra Keats, wrote The Snowy Day? Why do you think he wrote that story? Why do you think the author wanted to tell this story? Estelle?
Because it might have been winter there, and he got the idea from winter when it was winter there.
Do you think maybe he was talking about when he was a little boy, maybe? And what it was like when it was winter? Okay, that's a good thought. Anybody else have anything different? Why do you think he wrote that story? Carolyn?
I think he's used his imagination.
Oh, he could have just thought of this story with his imagination, and maybe he wanted to entertain us. He wanted to tell us what it was like on a snowy day, using his imagination. Both of those reasons could be true. It could have been something that really happened to him as a little boy, Ezra Keats, or he could have used his imagination and thought of this story to entertain us. Either one would be correct. Well, great job, friends. You did a wonderful job with our lesson today and telling the events of our story in order, sequencing them in order. Tomorrow, we are going to write about this story. We will become authors ourselves, like Ezra Keats, and we are going to write about the snowy day and do an illustration to match. We're going to talk about how the author and the illustrator, which in this story is the same person, how they have to work together because the illustration needs to match what the story is saying. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow when we meet again. We will have one more handout that you'll have to print out tomorrow, but if you don't have a printer and can't do it, that's okay. You can just use a sheet of paper. All right, friends, thank you for joining me today.
Bye-bye. Bye, Miss